Hungarian Folk Tales. A fox seeks shelter. Once upon a time, there lived a wily fox. The old fox was hungry, and so he took a sack and left his home. He walked and walked until the sky grew dark, and he stood outside the house of a rich farmer. He knocked hard on the door, and when asked who was there, he replied, "I'm a poor traveller in need of shelter for the night. Will you take pity on me?" The rich farmer had a good heart, and so did his wife. They let the fox come in and offered him supper. "Kind sir, are there no thieves around the house? I have a fine fat cockerel in my sack, and I wouldn't like to have it taken in the night." "Worry not, Mr. Fox. Nothing has been stolen in my house. You can sleep in peace." "Oh, poor me, my fine fat cockerel has been stolen." They all searched high and low, but no one could find the cockerel anywhere. The rich farmer was so ashamed that a guest of his had been robbed, and he felt sorry for the old fox as it wailed and moaned. But what could he do? He gave the fox a fine fat cockerel of his own and wished him well. So the fox left with a grateful grin on his whiskered face. He walked and walked until the sky grew dark and knocked hard on the door of a second farm. Good people lived in this house, and he was welcomed once more. As they were about to go to bed, the fox began to scour the room as if searching for thieves. "Kind sir, let me tell you that I have a fine fat goose in my sack, and I wouldn't like it to be stolen in the night." "Worry not, Mr. Fox. Nothing has been stolen in my house. You can sleep in peace." The fox waited for these fine folk to fall asleep, and he opened the sack. And what was in the sack? Why, the cockerel, of course. He took the fat fowl out and ate it all up, feathers and all. "Oh, poor me, my fine fat goose has been stolen." They all searched high and low, but no one could find the goose anywhere. The farmer then gave the old fox a fine fat goose of his own to stop him crying and moaning so. He walked and walked until the sky grew dark, and he stood outside a third house. He knocked again, was let in again, but before they went to bed, he turned to the farmer and said, "I've put my sack here under the bench, kind sir, but I can't rest in my bed because I should tell you, kind sir, that I have got a fine fat piglet in it." "You can sleep in peace, Mr. Fox," the farmer assured him. "No matter what is in your sack, there will be no trouble here." "Oh, poor me, my fine fat piglet has been stolen." They all searched high and low, but no one could find the piglet anywhere. What else could the farmer do but give the fox a fine fat piglet of his own? When the sky grew dark that night, the fox knocked at another door. They let him in, and again he said the same before they went to sleep. "Kind sir, please look out for thieves this night, for I have a fine fat pig in my sack, and I wouldn't like it to be stolen." The farmer glanced at the sack and saw that it had no fine fat pig inside, and knew from its squeals that it was only a piglet. But the wily fox didn't go to sleep. He ate the piglet up, curly tail and all. As soon as the sun rose, the fox began to moan, "Oh, poor me, my fine fat pig has been stolen." The farmer immediately saw the trick and pretended to feel sorry for the old fox. "Don't be so sad, and don't wake the village with your moaning. I'll give you 2 fat pigs instead of 1. Give me your sack so I can put them into it outside." The master went outside with the sack. He had 2 hungry foxhounds. He put them into the fox's sack, tied it up, gave it to the fox, and wished him well. When the wily old fox opened the sack, he saw no pigs. And what should jump out of the sack but the 2 hungry foxhounds? The fox ran as fast as his red legs could carry him. He forgot about his belly and wanted to save his furry hide. But the hungry foxhounds caught hold of his tail and tore him to shreds. If they hadn't, my story would never end. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Pork Pudding. Once upon a time, there lived a man who had a pig. The pig grew very big and fat, so the man decided to slaughter it for food. By the time spring came, the man and his family had eaten everything but the pork pudding. One day, the man went to tend his vines while his wife and 3 daughters stayed at home to cook supper. The wife told the eldest daughter, "Go up into the attic and fetch the pork pudding, my girl, and we'll cook it for your father's supper." The eldest girl did as she was told and was about to cut the pork pudding down when it spoke to her. "What do you want? You won't eat me, because I'll eat you first." And with these words, it ate the girl up. The wife could not imagine why her daughter had not come back down with the pork pudding. So she sent the second eldest daughter up to the attic to fetch it. But the fat pork pudding ate the second daughter up as well. So the wife sent the youngest girl up to fetch the pork pudding. But the youngest daughter did no better than her sisters, and the bulging pork pudding ate her up too. The wife could not imagine what had happened to her 3 darling daughters. "Well, I shall see for myself," she said, and went up into the roof. When she saw the size of the enormous pork pudding, she was pleased. But when she tried to cut the pork pudding down, it ate her up in a single mouthful. That evening, the man returned home from his vines to find no one at home to cook his supper. There was no supper on the stove and not even a fire inside it. The man searched high and low for his wife and 3 daughters. He realized that he would go hungry, so he went up to the attic to fetch the pork pudding to eat for his supper. But when the man got up into the attic and tried to cut the round pork pudding down, it shouted at him like it had at the others, "You won't eat me, I'll eat you first." And without any ado, the pork pudding ate the man up. By now, the heavy pork pudding was so weighty that the string could no longer hold it. It fell from the beam, rolled down the ladder, onto the porch, and out into the garden. The little house was on a big hill, so the gigantic pork pudding rolled all the way down the street. The local folks were just coming back from the fields, and the massive pork pudding ate them all up. The roly-poly pork pudding met a herd of pigs at the edge of the village, being led by a swineherd eating bacon with a pocket knife. The preposterously large pork pudding ate all the pigs up, and then the swineherd too. But the pocket knife was open, and the swineherd cut his way out of the pork pudding, and everybody followed him out into the sunshine. If that pork pudding had not split as it did, my story would have never ended. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Pussycat Princess. Once upon a time, there lived a king, and the king had 3 sons. All 3 princes were of marrying age, and so their father told them to find themselves wives. He threw 3 sticks in the air, 1 for each son, and said, "Wherever your stick falls is where you find your bride." The eldest son's stick fell towards a young baroness. The middle son's stick fell towards a young countess, while the youngest son's stick fell towards the dark forest. The young men all left the palace, but the youngest one was very sad. He had no idea how he would find a bride in the thick forest. And as he was walking in the forest, he met a small pussycat that walked behind him. The young prince spoke to the pussycat and said, "My royal father told me to travel to these parts where I would find my bride, but I can't see a girl anywhere near. Don't worry, I will marry you." The prince could not return home until he promised to marry the pussycat. The other princes had already arrived back, and their father asked them each what they thought of their bride. The eldest one said that he found a baroness, and the middle son said that he found a countess, while the youngest one asked them to wait and see. Then the king ordered all the 3 grooms to fetch a beautiful bouquet from their beloved. The 2 elder ones went happily, but the youngest one was very sad. When he reached the edge of the forest, the pussycat was already waiting for him. "My dear betrothed, you look so unhappy. Tell me, why are you so sad?" "How wouldn't I be sad when my royal father has ordered us all to bring a bouquet from our fiancés? Now what could I bring from a pussycat?" "Don't worry, just lie down and take a rest." Then the pussycat scratched a tree and many more pussycats appeared. One of them brought silver flowers, another golden flowers, and a third brought diamond flowers, and the bride arranged them all in a beautiful bouquet. The other 2 princes were already at home when the young prince arrived late. The king said that the bouquets were truly beautiful, but the most beautiful of all belonged to the youngest son. They all asked him to tell the name of his bride-to-be, but he asked them to wait and see. Days passed and soon became a week, when the king ordered his sons to go to their brides and fetch a handkerchief each. The young princes all left, but the youngest one was very sad. By the time he reached the edge of the forest, the pussycat was already waiting for him. "My dear betrothed, you look so unhappy. Tell me, why are you so sad?" "How wouldn't I be sad when my royal father has ordered us all to bring a handkerchief from our fiancés? But a pussycat cannot weave." "Don't worry, just lie down and take a rest." The pussycat scratched the tree, and once again more pussycats appeared. One brought silver yarn, another brought golden yarn, and a third gave diamond yarn, and the pussycat bride wove them together. When he arrived at the palace, the king inspected all 3 handkerchiefs. He told the eldest boys that theirs were quite pretty, but he told the youngest son that his was the prettiest of all. Weeks passed and soon became a month when the king told his sons to bring their fiancés to the palace. The 2 elder boys went happily for their spouses, while the youngest one became sadder than ever before. How could he possibly take the pussycat home? His pussycat bride was already waiting for him at the edge of the forest. "My dear betrothed, you look so unhappy. Tell me, why are you so sad?" "How wouldn't I be sad when my royal father has ordered us all to fetch our brides? Now how can I present a pussycat at the palace?" "Don't worry, just lie down and take a rest." The youngest prince thought he would never sleep, but at last he succumbed and fell into a slumber. When he awoke, he was very worried, but the young princess told him it was she in the guise of a pussycat whom he had betrothed, but she had been under a curse to live like that until a young man asked for her hand in marriage. "I was a pussycat, and you asked me to marry you, so I turned back into a princess." A wonderful coach awaited them, with proud coachmen and fine horses, so the prince sat in the carriage with his princess and travelled back to the palace in regal style. The wedding party was already underway at the palace when the guards came to the king and told him that a king had arrived from another country. When the young couple arrived, the king soon saw that they were his son and his beautiful bride. They were all amazed to discover that the youngest prince's bride was the most beautiful of them all. Then they all sang and danced and danced and sang until the wedding party was done. And this is where my story ends.